Hello everyone, James Williams, Director of Programs with MEF. And as you saw there, I was on the speaker end of a panel for a change. And Dario asked me a really difficult question. How are we, MEF, doing as an organization with regards to fraud? And of course, we're member-led. And I put us somewhere in the middle at a 7.5 or 8. But of course, I wanted to say a 9.5 or 10. But hey, anyway, next up, I'd like to give a very, very warm welcome to Mr. Simeon Coney. Simeon, a very warm welcome. Hi.
Hi, James. Thanks very much.
No problem. And you are the first of our sponsors up to present today. So a very warm welcome to you personally and indeed AdaptiveMobile Security. And thank you for stepping forward to sponsor this event, which makes it available for absolutely everyone. So that's a first really important thing to say. Now, obviously, we're still in the security section of the event. Your company is all about security, and your presentation you're going to be delivering now is all about enabling value-added services from a security platform. I would like just tell us who AdaptiveMobile Security is and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a company, as the name implies, that focus on security. Really, our objectives are to ensure that everyone in the ecosystem can have a safe, comfortable, great experience, conversations, interactions. So we provide our offers and our solutions to carriers, to interconnect providers, to wholesalers, to CPaaS, to marketing aggregators, to ensure that those conversations are what the brand wants to send, what the customer wants to receive, and that there isn't damage or harm incurred in parties in handling that discussion.
Fantastic. Simeon, I will leave you to it. You have the stage, but I'll be back with you towards the end of your presentation. So all the best. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, James. So what I'd like to do today is actually not talk just about security. What I'd like to really focus on is that for a lot of folks, security is absolutely something that has to be done. You know, who does not want, or in fact, most importantly, need security in this current environment? But it is a complex project. It is something that interacts with many parts of the business. So what I'll be looking at is really how this project, how this investment can be used for more than just security. How can it add other value to the business, which is really looking at value-added services from security platforms. So to start with, what I'd like to do is look at who is deploying security. So, I mean, the first thing is security posture by everyone in the ecosystem has absolutely been maturing over the past decade, at least. The attacks have been varying in nature. They are continually evolving. And the people doing that are highly motivated to do so, typically for financial gains, sometimes for malicious purposes, but they're not giving up. They're not going away. And the need for security is especially well recognized by the mobile operators who are terminating or originating traffic. And predominantly, there's several reasons for that. You know, it's very visible to their end customers. They have a simple point of contact, you know, customer care centers to call to complain if they've suffered any issue, if they've received unwanted communication, if they're confused about something. Operators also have a very close relationship with regulators who also keep an eye on this stuff. So the need is very well recognized and understood by operators. And when we look at what approaches are being taken, this evolving war of arms in security between attackers and defenders has very much necessitated increasing security capabilities. You know, it is not an environment of fit and forget. Instead, it's very much around inspecting traffic, profiling behaviors, discovering new attacks, and being able to then control and manage those attacks. So, you know, this is delivering a broad set of rich capabilities across a broad and wide set of areas. So whether this be for voice, whether it be for messaging, whether it be for data services, whether it be for consumer, whether it be for enterprise, whether it be for IoT services, whether it be related to financial transactions, whether it be related to customer care, whether it be related to end user services, these fundamental principles apply to all of those. And what we're seeing, what we're observing, is that the effects of deploying security is at last giving people insight and visibility into where these threats are coming from. You know, it's no longer about, is everything good, or send an alert or an alarm if bad things happen. It's now about really understanding where these attacks are coming from, so they can now be proactive. And what we're seeing as a major trend is that this type of insight is actually being driven upstream through that conversation chain. So when operators have deployed their solutions, they're able to see where those attacks are coming from. And the source of those attacks isn't actually necessarily the person originating them. They're just the last link in the chain. So what we're seeing is they're able to then push upstream, or with their interconnect partners, the need to say, well, actually, we see the traffic is coming from behind you. You also need to deploy security. So we're seeing this sort of unwrapping of the onion and this deployment of security at more and more and more layers. So the key thing is security as platforms is now being deployed throughout more and more of the ecosystem. And when we talk about security, I mean, just as we heard on that last session there are so many things to come under the umbrella, you know, whether it be some of the clear things that are attacking end users, fraud, spam, phishing attacks, malware on the device, no matter what the service, whether it be attacks against network infrastructure, whether it be IP or whether it be signaling related. Increasingly, whether it be attacks on the customer data itself, commonly a fairly overlooked system that's actually held within the infrastructure, or in fact, even social engineering attacks on employees to gain access to that information. And of course, we see service affecting attacks and revenue and margin impacting attacks like traffic inflation and grey route traffic. So security as a term can be a very broad umbrella used to apply to all of these. And again, this is why we're starting to see solutions deployed across a broad range of infrastructure to address this wide demand in the business. And from an end user's perspective, it is getting more complex. It is getting more challenged. You know, they're being alerted in the media. They're being alerted by their own device. I mean, everyone has received either unwanted calls from robo-dialing, unwanted messages, whether it be related to the current environment with COVID-related scams, or just even bulk unsolicited protection or spam campaigns where people are offering services or goods that have been unsolicited. So users are facing an inundation of attacks. Again, it's this war of arms that we're seeing driving new security techniques. So all of this means that there is a number of considerations for deploying security. Starting off with the justification. So when somebody is looking to buy a solution, you know, it's always been about what's the business case? Is there a return on investment, or what is the business priority? I mean, all of us have so many demands on our time. We've got such a long list of priorities. Why should this get to the top? Why should this be something I have to do now? And really, what is the ROI on protection? I mean, we all have, in car insurance, we all have smoke alarms. What's the ROI on that? Sometimes it's rather hard to quantify against either an unspecified or an unknown or an unsized, or more importantly, a future threat or prevention rather than actual impact after attack. Or how do you create an ROI against regulatory compliancy or contractual compliancy? So this is really where it's all coming to looking at how can we help create more value from the solutions that we deploy. And you know, the most effective security is something that can actually deliver that proactive defense. You know, it's one thing to be able to say, hey, you've had a problem, it has cost you money, but you really need the ability to do something about it. You really need to be able to prevent or control or block that revenue loss, that attack, that issue, that service affecting thing. You know, there needs to be something that is sitting in the control path or in the network that is actually doing an active function there. And this in itself creates an inertia because it's deploying something inside an infrastructure. And understandably, network teams are reticent to keep on deploying more and more and more nodes in the thing that is fundamental to the business, the thing that is carrying traffic, the thing that is delivering service. And too many bumps on the wire create additional risk. They create more latency. So again, from a network architecture perspective, there's really a drive and a desire to be able to say, well, if I've deployed these security platforms, what more value can I unlock from them? So really what we're proposing and suggesting and always recommending is have discussions when you're looking at deploying security, or if you're involved in the value add side, talk with the security teams, because really what they're looking for is making security affordable. Find approaches that can deliver additional benefits to improve the security business case. And in doing so, that enables you to get the most comprehensive and effective security. It's not about buying the cheapest. The consequences, the risks if security doesn't work are very significant. Erosion of public trust, impact to the brand, impact in the confidence in the service usage. But again, quantifying those, if there is a clear business case with value-added services, that makes it a more compelling and easier approach to justifying the project. And likewise, when we're talking security, it can also now increasingly include things like regulatory requirements and code of conduct requirements. Again, coming back to the fact that there needs to be something to deliver that control on the wire. What node is actually best placed to do that? So, we're now starting to see, again, regulators across the globe consider end user interactions and services. So they're looking at things like consent descriptions. Actually, has somebody opted into services, and how effective are the opt-out controls on that? They're concerned about harassment and social engineering. That's always in the forefront of the media. They're looking at unauthorized transfer of content. Is that something that is appropriate on that channel? Has it been paid? Has the end user wanted? They're looking at misleading and confusing practices like identity sharing or snowshoeing when multiple identities are used. Just even simple things like using URLs in messages, making sure that that is consistent and clear to the end user. Because again, so often what we find is that brands have a perspective of, I want to have this interaction with the user, but not thinking about all of the other interactions the user may be receiving. And in fact, actually all the other interactions attackers can do to emulate. So if brands are using many different identities, many different sending sources, many different URLs as their call to action, attackers can leverage that. So this is why we're starting to see more formalization of best sending practices by regulators and in contractual codes of conduct to start addressing these things, all of which are well suited to be delivered from security nodes. And when we look at other types of value-added services, there's a broad range from improving customer experience to service differentiation to cost reduction and revenue generation. And just two things I want to briefly talk about is just firstly the evolution in pricing trends. We've gone from a message is a message to, well, what's P2P versus A2P traffic? To actually now looking at A2P, what is an international brand versus a national brand for pricing tariffing, to actually even evolving into what is the value of that conversation happening over that discussion. And the scope to be able to actually now profile and understand, and then more importantly, associate a value of a message to the value of the conversation is really key to being able to deliver new innovative service packaging, new innovative service pricing, where it can transition from, say, for example, flat rate pricing to value-based pricing, where the brand can keep talking to the end user, but each message, each interaction is charged appropriately. So this is just a few examples of the many different spectrums that we have in terms of value-based pricing. We've also got a range of campaign interactions that we're starting seeing formalized now across the globe, particularly in North America with 10-digit long code. This concept of campaign registration and understanding and helping users interact, and actually ensuring that everybody in that value chain understands what they can bring to that and what levels of control is becoming critical and is becoming valuable. So we have a large ecosystem with many, many changes, all of which creates an opportunity now to start looking and delivering more services, delivering more best practices, and also rewarding good behavior. You know, through all of this, what we want to ensure is that security gives you the ability to determine what is good versus bad. Certainly bad is addressed, it's remediated, it's improved, but good should be rewarded. Good should enable people to do more, to talk more, to send more, to have better value conversations, to be able to do more services, to gain additional benefits. These are all of the capabilities that you can get from security platforms by thinking beyond just security functions and now more about what else, what other values from that control, from that discovery, and from that insight can I get? Thank you. If there's any questions.
Simeon, hi. Yeah, great presentation. It's very, very clear that once you have all your security ducks in a row, should we say, you end up with market development and growth. And that's what MEF is all about, market development, growth, and ultimately consumer trust. But you and I have both been in this business long enough to know that actually a false positive can be worse than letting anything fraudulent through. How do you go about ensuring that these false positives, so blocking legitimate content and messages, doesn't actually happen? How can you go about doing that?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say false positives are the bane of the industry, because a knee-jerk reaction is, well, let's remove the control. And then it's like, is it better the devil you know or better the devil you don't, which is what attacks are going to get through. So I think certainly from a security industry mantra, it's generally a view of traffic is trusted unless it's deemed to be definitively bad. So yeah, just because something is suspicious, don't overreact. You know, we're dealing in a very different scale here to an enterprise industry. You know, an enterprise may say, well, on my security firewall, I want to block anything I don't know, anything that comes from a source I don't know. Whereas in the environment we're dealing with, our customers are talking with every country, with every source, with brand new services we've never, ever seen before. So yes, having security on the side of caution is absolutely critical, which I think is, yes, certainly one key step to mitigate and minimize false positives. Another, though, I think comes down to one of my earlier slides, which is complexity of control. You know, blunt controls, you know, when you've only got a hammer, everything looks like a nail. You know, having something that is fine-grained, something that can focus on the issue is critical, you know, so it doesn't have these unintended consequences and side effects of blocking legitimate traffic.
It's a really tough tightrope to walk, though, isn't it? Because there's so many eyes on our industry now. If you look at the mainline press, particularly here in the UK, and what's happening, and we heard from Dario, and indeed, if you look at the Times, the top banner on the Times today, talking about fraud and ultimately consumer trust in industry, we need to get it right. But you're right, we cannot block this legitimate content. Simeon, a real pleasure having you with me here, and indeed MEF at MEF Connects Wholesale. Thank you again for supporting this event and indeed future events. And I personally look forward to seeing you, hopefully in person, at our next event, which is MEF Connects Omnichannel on November the 30th and December the 1st in London. Thank you.
Indeed. Thanks, James.